Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, welcome to the working group meeting of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Let me begin first of all by thanking Isimud for hosting us for this very important meeting. There could not be a more appropriate place than Kathmandu and indeed Nepal to try and address the full range of impacts and opportunities that the CCAC represents. Short-lived climate pollutants are as relevant to what happens on the glaciers of the mountains of Nepal as it is to the issues of air pollution and health in the valleys of Kathmandu and other cities. Indeed, the notion of multiple benefits as a way of trying to unite actions at different levels and across national boundaries on the issue of short-lived climate pollutants is something that in a country such as Nepal is almost self-evident. As we look back over the last 3 years, I think we can with some pride and satisfaction note that the issue of short-lived climate pollutants, and particularly the notion that this is a multiple benefits strategy and agenda that we are trying to bring to the attention of governments, of industry, of the private sector, of mayors and local authorities, but also non-governmental organizations and communities, has truly succeeded. The issue of short-lived climate pollutants is on the global agenda today, and with the Climate and Clean Air Coalition with over 100 members now established, and also a significant amount of funding being made available for rolling out the various action plans, means that the doors are open for us. The year 2015 is also a very special year, a year in which we can both scale up and accelerate action on short-lived climate pollutants and contribute to a number of different agendas. Not only do we have the September 2015 summit on the post-2015 development agenda, the adoption of a new set of sustainable development goals, the Paris COP and therefore the aspiration to reach a new and meaningful and ambitious agreement on actions that can be taken in the future on addressing climate change, and also the window of time in the pre-2020 period in which ambitious actions that are taken by countries, by sectors, by enterprises, by local governments are ultimately set to make a significant contribution in preparing for scaled-up action on climate change. As we meet with the working group now, we have been tasked by the High-Level Assembly of the Climate Clean Air Coalition to work towards a 5-year strategic framework, and we are going to build in terms of that framework on the work that will be delivered through the midterm review, a framework for also measuring the impacts of the CCAC, and also the issue of how can we best brand and therefore attract other actors, a far greater number of actors, to the work of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. As you set about in looking at the next 5 years, we can certainly build on a number of very important experiences. The narrative and the science that underpin the work on short-lived climate pollutants is one that has resonated very well, whether in terms of countries in the so-called developed world or in the developing world, whether it is across different sectors that we have touched on, the different streams of work that we have tackled, or also on the aspiration of trying to demonstrate that action in one domain or with one rationale can produce very significant benefits in another. In this context, let me also note that the World Health Organization will this year look at a decision and further reinforced action on air quality and health, which clearly speaks centrally to one of the underlying objectives and also rationales for acting in the context of our coalition. The question now is, with all these mandates, these windows of opportunity and the open doors that have been created for the Climate Clean Air Coalition, what is it that we can actually work towards that is both justifiable in terms of the effort, the time and the opportunity costs that many of you as individuals, your institutions, are investing in this global coalition? Secondly, how can we also set ourselves milestones and targets that allow us to speak to the theory of change? Or put more simply, what is it that we believe we can justify in terms of actions that we are taking under the ambit of the Climate Clean Air Coalition in terms of potential outcomes? Our exercise and the objective of our work certainly is not about setting targets for others. At the same time, we cannot work in a vacuum. We are asking countries, communities, actors in the economy, civil society to commit to actions that require certainly upfront investment, changes in policies, in practices, introduction in new technologies, and ultimately to generate benefits that are in one form or another relatable to the actions that we are suggesting nations and a broad community of partners should take. The first question, therefore, we need to ask ourselves is, are the things that we are proposing to do under the different streams of work in a way likely to produce outcomes that also speak to the objectives of reducing short-lived climate pollutants? This, in essence, is the notion of a theory of change, and I think with the experience that we have now gathered, there is plenty of experience to draw on in trying to define that theory of change. A second, and perhaps to some slightly more complex issue, is what are the kinds of targets we can set for absolute reduction in short-lived climate pollutants? Are we able to relate the work that we can do with the networks, the capacities, the actors, the funding that is now at our disposal to a set of outcomes that will ultimately make a meaningful contribution to the multiple objectives that the CCAC represents? Here I think we have both the option of looking at national action plans. We can look at specific objectives that are tied to certain actions being put in place, be it policy or institutional arrangements, and how these would translate into a de facto and also ultimately measurable reduction in SLCP emissions. Secondly, we also need to look at the broader partnerships that can be mobilized. We know that much of the public policy action is premised also upon significant buy-in from actors, be they in the world of enterprise and business, or at the level of managing cities, local authorities, or indeed at the community level. Mobilizing both their participation, their resources, and their innovation must be part of a value proposition that the CCAC is putting forward and should help us define a 5-year horizon. Finally, we also need to look at the issue of financing. What are the returns on investment? Because investment we will require in terms of achieving a reduction in short-lived climate pollutants. We're not asking for you and for the CCAC to come up with an internal rate of return analysis, but the cost-benefit analysis needs to become more explicit, more transparent, and ultimately persuasive in order to generate the kind of scale-up that we are looking for. We all know that at the end of the day, the CCAC as a global coalition is in the first instance a catalyst. But the premise of a catalyst is always that it catalyzes actions that are both scalable and significant to actors and also beneficiaries far beyond the original group of initiating actors. The fact that we can today in the year 2015 look upon a 3-year track record of the CCAC, not only in terms of identifying, based on good science, some real opportunities for action, but also of having succeeded in attracting a very wide range of organizations, national authorities, business actors, and also non-governmental organizations, speaks to the attractiveness of the potential value proposition of the CCAC. If we look 5 years down the line, would we be able to put some kind of milestone, some kind of target in place that would allow us to speak to the issue of reduction of sulfur in fuels, of healthier brick kiln industries, of trying to address the issue of HFCs, of also addressing a number of other streams of work that are now part of the program of work of the CCAC, and thereby provide both those who are still watching with perhaps some skepticism or concern as to whether these are targets that will enable us to make progress in our self-interest, be it the self-interest of a country, of its citizens, or even of business and industrial sectors that ultimately are called upon to act. I hope that both drawing on the midterm review, but also in trying to now focus on the 5-year strategic outlook, you will be able to help us and ultimately allow us to take back to the high-level assembly a persuasive, a compelling, and above all, an effective in terms of impacts and outcomes proposition that will allow the CCAC to thrive over the next 5 years, alongside the negotiating process on climate change, but also as an integral part of addressing issues that are reflected in the post-2015 development agenda, and perhaps by the end of this year clearly laid out also in the Sustainable Development Goals. Our value proposition, our added value, and our contribution lies ultimately in trying to make the issue of addressing short-lived climate pollutants part of a broader development agenda, a vision in which both the workplace and also the air and the environment in general in which we operate as communities, as societies, will be more conducive towards a healthier planet and a healthier world for people also. Let me end my brief introductory remarks by thanking all of you once more for having been such dedicated and committed partners in this initiative. I think we have already proven to the world that good science with a good platform and a clear set of deliverables that we are committed to can make a difference. The year 2015 is a tremendous opportunity for the CCAC not only to be recognized, but also to renew its promise in terms of the next 5 years. Thank you very much.